on, everyone? I'm your host, Bear, Chris Fallica. I'm going to be joined here by my co-host, Geoff Schwartz. Bear Brett's college football previews are here. It's so good to be talking football again. So we're going to kick around some of our favorite win totals this year. We're going to be joined by Brett Ciancia from Pick 6 Previews shortly. But Geoff, I think it's only right to start the college football season talking about a topic that is passionate and loved by everyone out there, and that's Colorado. Where else to start other than Colorado, right?
Colorado? They play football? No way.
That's what I did. Joel Klatt's alma mater, Buffaloes. You might have heard that Deion Sanders is their head coach, and Deion's son is their quarterback, and one of his other sons is a defensive back. Yeah. Have you heard of them?
No, but it is kind of jogging my memory now. Colorado Buffs. Oregon played them last year, right? Bear.
They did, and Oregon did not go over the team total, and I'm very mad.
I know.
Dan Lanning owes me some money for calling off the Dogs late and not going over the team total. Cost me some money. I think it was 28-0 before the end of the first quarter, and they still didn't go over. So I'm a little bitter at your alma mater there, but
should be.
Kidding aside, Colorado, again, they're one of those hot button type teams where everybody has an opinion one way or the other. Season win total 5.5. Very difficult Big 12 schedule this year.
Yeah.
Again, you look, they get Kansas on the road, they get Utah at home. You got to go to Texas Tech. You get Kansas State. You got to go to UCF. You get a non-conference at Nebraska, like you get Oklahoma State at home to end the year. Like they really did not get any favors from the Big 12 computer in terms of their schedule. Season win total is 5.5. I've had people tell me that on paper they have the most talent in the Big 12, but you're shaking your head. No, you disagree with that. So I didn't even get the question out of my mouth. Do you agree with that? And will it translate to more than 5 wins this year?
I mean, they might have the 2 highest draft picks on their team. It's Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. Now, McMillan from Arizona in the Big 12, I think will be a top 15 wide receiver. So I don't know where those Shedeur and Travis Hunter will fall down. So maybe he's the one guy in the Big 12 right now that has a chance to go higher than those two. But that's it. They're a one-deep team. And by the way, I have no strong opinion either way. I think they're most likely 6-6 this season, so that'd be over. I don't feel good enough to wager on their over because they have improved, right? They can't be worse on defense. They added some defensive linemen, which I like in the portal, but that's it. 2 defensive linemen I like in the portal. They have a whole new offensive line with a true freshman at left tackle who may be good. He's a 5-star kid, but typically it takes a little bit of time as offensive lineman to get good. Then you have 4 other new guys. I mean, like they have a one deep Bear, a one deep. That's it. And so if you have attrition, you lose a right guard, you lose a wide receiver, you lose a pass rusher, you lose a cornerback. There's no one behind them. This is the problem with portaling your whole roster, right? You don't have talent. You've grown up to sort of take the place of starters when they get hurt, Bear. So I don't have a strong opinion either way on them. I think they're 6-6. I have made a couple of future wagers, future game lines on them. I wrote this back in May for Fox Sports. I took Colorado -7 against the Bison week 1. I feel like every Joe Schmo is going to take NDSU to upset them in week 1.
Everyone will be on the Bison.
But NC State and North Dakota State is not as good as they have been in the past, right? They're just not. But my thing is like, who's going to stop Travis Hunter from scoring? From getting 300 yards on offense? No one on the team is. So I think Colorado now that's 8.5 now. So I got a good number at 7.
Is it 8.5?
Yeah, it's 8.5 now.
Oh wow!
And I took Nebraska week 2 -6.5. I think Nebraska is much improved. If Raiola Bear can just be a little bit better than what they had on offense last season at quarterback, that team's going to win a lot. And then I took Utah all the way in like week 12 -8 against Colorado. I think that line is about 2 touchdowns by kickoff. So I have dabbled in Colorado wagers. But the team total to me they're not a team that I really feel strongly either way about.
Say it all clicks and they have the type of year that Deion Sanders and the players there think that they are capable of having. Is a Travis Hunter Heisman bet, and I think
Yeah.
he's been out there at around 65 to 1 or so. Is that worth something investing in on the year? Because, look, I think, well, let me let you, I'll let you answer, and then I'll get back to what my theory as to why that might be. Go
So there's
ahead.
only been two non-quarterback winners the last 14 years, right? It was Devontae Smith, I believe, Derrick Henry, the two, both Alabama players
Mhm.
that won Heisman's that were not. Um, and for the most part, to win the Heisman, you have to be on a team that wins 9 or 10 games. Like they're not giving the Heisman out to a 6-6 quarterback, right? They're just
Right.
not doing that.
Correct.
So if everything breaks right for Colorado, I mean, I guess the highest extreme bearing, maybe they're 10-2, Um, Travis Hunter to me is maybe the most skilled player in the sport. So it wouldn't surprise me if he had a year at cornerback and at wide receiver. You had 500, 700 yards on offense, and you have. I mean, dude, he's an elite NFL cornerback. Like he's that talented as a player. So I think it'd be totally worth a play on him to win the Heisman. But when you make these Heisman wagers, you're also wagering on the team having that team success to put them in the position to be considered sort of an MVP, right? And that's the hard part to me is I just there. Look, we will talk to Brett Ciancia in a few minutes. Like you're high on UCF, they're at UCF, right? They're not going to win at UCF in my opinion. They're not winning in Nebraska, so that's now 2 losses. Are we putting it behind us that they're going to beat Colorado State like easily in Colorado State? I don't know, Bear. They go to Arizona. They got Kansas State at home. They're Utah, Kansas, Oklahoma State. Like I, 9-3, maybe the best they're going to do, and so that's not a Heisman winner for me for Travis Hunter. I don't think.
I think the reason I brought him up is because I think you can punch a lot of holes in a lot of these Heisman quarterback like favorites right now. Like if you look,
Oh, you can.
like I think like if you look at Carson Beck, like is he going to have massive production? Quinn Ewers, is he going to have massive production? Is Texas going to be 10-2 or 11-1? Dylan Gabriel, I think. I mean, is Oregon going to be the team that everybody thinks that? And he's the favorite right now. He's taking so much action. You look at Jalen Milrow. Is he going to be able to grow? Is Alabama going to succeed post Nick Saban? Jackson Dart and Ole Miss. He's been another
Yeah,
trendy guy. Will Howard seems like just a guy for Ohio State. Nico at Tennessee, people are high on him, but again, Tennessee
young
feels
player.
9-3ish. Connor Wegman lost his weapons at A&M. Jackson Arnold, Oklahoma is going to the SEC. Riley Leonard, Notre Dame. I don't see him as a Heisman guy. Klubnik at Clemson, like Drew Aller, no. Like all these quarterbacks, and our producer
Yeah,
Sean, Tennessee grad, saying we'll never have a Heisman winner. So you can immediately cross Nico off the list
just
right then and there. So
Tennessee
Sean
fans
says
are
Tennessee will never have a Heisman
so
winner. So
sad.
that you're throwing money away if you bet Nico. And I think that's kind of where I'm getting at. I'm trying to look for someone that isn't necessarily one of these obvious guys because they all feel kind of the same. I made 2 Heisman bets so far. Well, 3. I did play Travis Hunter at 65 to 1. I played Julian Sayin at Ohio State at 100 to 1. And I think, again, is there a guarantee? Is he going to win the job? Maybe, maybe not. I think the way I get the feel that they're going to go at Ohio State is I think Will Howard will be the guy at the start of the year, and we'll see where they are by the time the meat of the schedule comes up later in the year because I think Sayin is super talented, and I bet Jeremiah Smith 150 to 1 because I think he is a total freak, and I think he has an opportunity to be super super special. I've heard people say who have seen him at Ohio State and have been around in the NFL as well that he could start for a number of teams in the NFL right now when he would be a top 10 or a top 5 pick had he come out this year. So he is super talented from what I hear. And if he is, then maybe holding 150 to 1 on maybe the most exciting player in college football. Who the hell knows? But I think it's just part of my nature
Yeah.
to kind of look for someone outside the obvious, despite the fact that in the last few years it has gone to like a quarterback, but maybe not
Yeah.
necessarily one of the favorites at the start of the year.
So Teratoa, I can't get his first name right. I'm sorry, buddy.
Back.
Tetaroa McMillan from Arizona is my long shot Heisman Bear. Um, he had over 1,400 yards last year and 10 touchdowns. I looked at Devontae Smith the year he won the Heisman. Now, this team success matters a lot here. We just talked about that. You're on a different side of Arizona than I am, and we'll get that.
We'll talk about that later in the show.
Yeah. But let's just say that they play well this season, right? Devontae Smith had about 1,550 yards in the regular season. Now he ended up with over 1,800 because he had the SEC championship game plus 2 playoff games. That doesn't matter for the Heisman, right? The vote's already in by then. And about 20 touchdowns. Maybe it was about 17. I mean, we need 4 more touchdowns, 5 more touchdowns, and 400 yards more, 200 yards more to like stand out even more. Bear, that feels doable for him. Now, again, Arizona's got to go 10-2. But McMillan is a legit like top 10 pick. So I think that's where I put a little bit of money on. It was plus 15,000 when I got it.
I'm never going to complain with anybody who finds a price and plays it and takes a shot in an award market like this. So we're going to give you our best season win totals that we like at the end of the pod. We give you some more that we have played already with Brett and some other ones that I've already fired it on. I fired Arkansas under 5. I don't think 5 is available, but I still would play Arkansas under 4.5. They've bottomed out last year. They looked like just a defeated team. You bring in Bobby Petrino as offensive coordinator, who kind of picked Taylor Green from Boise State to be the quarterback. But if you go down that schedule, outside of the game against Arkansas Pine Bluff, like there isn't a game on that schedule that says that's a win. I know Sam Pittman's saying all the right things, but we'll see. That offensive line was so bad last year, both protecting the quarterback and helping the run game. So I did go under 4.5 with under 5 with Arkansas, and I would still go under 4.5. And I went under 5.5 with UCLA. And it's weird because like that line I think opened up at 6 in some spots. Wow. I got it at 5.5, and now it's down to 4.5. So I guess my question for you, Geoff, is would you look at, depending on what the juice is, would you potentially look at maybe buying back some at over 4.5 and thinking that the Bruins were a 5-7 type team? Or do you think like 4 and 8 is more likely than 5 and 7?
Buddy, I'm on their under 2. And nothing to do with.
Feels like everybody is.
I got 5.5 though, so I'll gladly take the 5.5. I think that the press conference last week ended up maybe dropping them down even more. Deshaun Foster was on the radio with us. He was fantastic. So I don't think he knew an opening statement there, but they're just. I'll just say this: Hawaii plus 13.5. I think we're all on. I know I'm on, Bear. I think you're on as well. Sammy's
it moved to like 12.5, didn't it?
Back to 13.5 now. I got it. Yeah, I got it the other day. They're at LSU as well. They have a 3 LSU, Oregon, Penn State, 3 straight weeks. So that's now they're
winning any of those games.
Now they're 0-3, at least 3 losses. There's no guarantee they're going to beat Hawaii. They're at Rutgers. I'm high on Rutgers. We'll get that in a second. They're at Nebraska, Iowa, Washington, USC, and Fresno. I mean, Bear, 4 and 8 is probably what their roster right now just needs a lot of work, dude. It just needs work. And that's what happens when Chip left in a weird time. Deshaun Foster hasn't really able to get his players in there. Eric Bieniemy's the OC now. They lost almost their entire defensive line to the NFL. It was excellent last season. Danton Lynn went to go coach USC. It wouldn't surprise me if they went to Minnesota week 6 and they were 1-4.
I don't think it would surprise me. I do think they're going to beat Hawaii though. I think they will get to win the game against Timmy Chang's boys. For sure, but
they're still going to go under 5.5. The other one, I have a couple more, Bear, that we'll get one to Lynn later. But the Washington, I took Washington under 6 at like.
Oh, there's a shock. Geoff took Washington under.
I took it as an alternate number. Bear, I'm looking at it right now. You can pull up their Sugar Bowl depth chart. Okay, so you can just like search like
There was.
Washington depth chart versus.
Sure. What about the depth chart from
So,
the national championship game against Michigan?
well, we're not talking about Michigan, but I would go under Michigan too.
No. I'm not the Washington's depth chart from the national championship.
I'm talking about it's the same depth chart, same thing. But
but it was the national championship game, right? That Washington played in last year.
Yeah, well, yeah. Thankfully, they lost. Okay, and I saw the Michigan players at Big Ten Media. I thanked all three of them individually for beating Washington last season. I give them each an handshake and thank you so much for beating Washington. But you look at this, you look at this beautiful two deep they have here. Bear, out of 44 players, how many does Washington have back off their championship run last season? Do you know off the top of your head?
It's not many. It's like 6 or something, isn't it?
Three.
Yeah.
Three players. That's it. So Jedd Fisch, who I think we both agree, is a good football coach. He took Arizona from 1 win to 4 wins to 10 wins. The team has no one on their team from last season. It's a brand new football team going to play in the Big Ten this year. Like, to me, it's not about whether I dislike Washington or not, which I certainly do. It's about just the fits. Like Will Rogers, to me, Will Rogers came in to play with Kalen DeBoer. And like, he's a Kalen DeBoer type quarterback, not a Jedd Fisch quarterback. So I just don't think they're going to be good this season. So I took an alternate of under 6 at +2 something.
I don't dislike it because I think a lot of times, maybe not as much in college because there's only 12 games in the regular season, but certainly in the NFL, which we'll talk about in the NFL preview later this week. About looking at the alt win totals in the NFL, because you do have 17 games, so you've got a little bit more leeway in taking some plus prices with some alt win totals. But to talk about some more win totals and some teams to win conferences, college football playoff landscape, Geoff and I will be joined here momentarily by Brett Ciancia, Pick Six Previews. Geoff and I are now very pleased to be joined with someone's work who we have been reading for years. And I know Geoff has had him on his radio show before, but his first appearance here on Bear Bet's podcast, Brett Ciancia, who is the author and publisher and founder of Pick Six Previews. And if you have not ordered your copy or downloaded your copy or gotten a copy in the past, I suggest you do so. I'm not just giving Brett lip service here. It is the most up-to-date college football preview that I have found. It focuses only on the Power Four conferences. So if you're looking for the non-AQs, you need one of the more traditional previews. But if you're looking for is in-depth and up-to-date coverage of the AQ conferences, Pick Six Previews is where you want to go. So Brett, really appreciate you finally joining us on the show. And it's kind of an obvious topic, I guess, to start, but it's kind of the subject with the expansion of the playoff and people talking about, are we really expanding the field for teams that can win? Is the expansion good? Is the expansion bad? It still feels to me like it's Ohio State and Georgia versus the field. When I was out in Vegas a couple weeks ago, I actually got Chris Andrews at the South Point to post that prop, Ohio State and Georgia versus the field, and he kind of posted it as a toss-up. So kind of curious where you stand on this. Do you think it's Ohio State and Georgia versus the field, or are there some other teams out there that you think could crash the party?
Yeah, well, first off, Chris and Geoff, thanks for having me on. It's an honor to be talking with you guys, and big fans of your work and the podcast. And yeah, I mean, this is the 13th year I've done Pick Six Previews, the season preview book. And I could say it's the most change we've ever seen in the sport, given all the conference realignment. And you mentioned the expanded playoff. While we will see more faces involved in the expanded playoff than ever. But I think it's going to be Georgia and Ohio State in this prop, because you look at high school recruiting, it's number 1 and 2 in the country. And they're by far right there with Alabama. So it's going to be the name of high quality depth. And when you look at not just the high school recruiting, but the 2025 consensus mock draft, they're number 1 and number 2 there. So high quality depth, because you're going to have to go through a 12-game regular season, a really competitive conference title game, and then 3 more high power games. So it might sound like chalk or, make for boring radio there, but I think that's the right pick. It's just the 2 most talented teams. The last bit too is these dynasty tier teams, usually they cycle through their players a lot quicker than others to the pros, guys leaving early. But these two have an abnormally amount of returning production. So a lot coming back to these two super tier programs, and I'll take them against the field.
You mentioned the depth it takes to win 3 or 4 playoff games. That's been my number one thing, looking at sort of who can win a championship, because you might win one game. We've seen Washington and TCU do the last couple of years, but now you have to win 2, 3, and maybe 4 to win a championship. So outside of those two teams, who are the ones with the depth, at least to get maybe to a semifinal or championship game? Is it Oregon? Is it Texas? Is it Penn State? Is it Alabama? Who's sort of next up with the talent needed to win 3 or 4 playoff games?
Yeah, well, I'll go with Oregon here. This isn't your Oregon of the past where they have the hyper tempo offense, the gadgety offense. This is really built from the inside out, built in the trenches, started by Mario Cristobal, but now continue with Dan Lanning. And I think they found a new tier, a higher tier of recruiting that we ever thought possible for Oregon recently. They're the only program in the country to stack top 10 high school classes and top 10 transfer classes the last 2 cycles. So high quality players coming in from both the high school and transfer ranks. They return a lot. They could have, or maybe should have, won the Joe Moore Award last year for the top offensive line. 3 starters back from that unit. The big question coming in was going to be at quarterback, losing Bo Nix, but they go and backfill with Dylan Gabriel, who himself was in the Heisman race last year until mid-October from Oklahoma. So they lose a veteran QB. They bring in another really veteran guy in Gabriel. And I think this is a high-powered machine. And they're right there with Ohio State for number 1 and number 2 in the Big Ten. So I'll go with Oregon number 3 overall.
And Dante Moore as well was quite the coup to get him to come into Eugene as well. If something should happen to Gabriel, or even looking forward to next year, I'm sure the Oregon program appreciates that check cashing, Geoff, for the Schwartz NIL fund there out in Eugene. But I think what you said is key about the depth, and what people may or may not realize, because I still think there's probably some confusion on how the playoff is structured, how the team is seeded. And I think you and I know how it is, but I'm not sure if a lot of people understand that. Like, if you say Oregon and Texas are the 2 teams that potentially could win the title outside of Ohio State and Georgia, if you're not conference champ, you've got to play in that out bracket game. You've got to play three games just to get there. So you're playing in the 5-12 game or the 6-11 game if you're second place in the SEC or the Big Ten. And while we think Oregon and Texas are that good, are you going to be able to play 2 games and then beat Ohio State or Georgia in the semifinal, and then beat Ohio State or Georgia again in the title game? I think it makes it a very difficult proposition for anybody outside those 2 teams. So I did play the Ohio State and Georgia versus the field, and I certainly think that there is a situation where if I would think Ohio State or Georgia should be in the title game. On the other side, if I want to buy back and take the dog on the money line or take the dog plus some points, there'll probably be an opportunity there to lock in a profit. So we talked about the obvious contenders. Who are some of the not so obvious contenders? Maybe not necessarily just to win the title, but is there a team out there, Brett, that you have in terms of that might be considered a little bit of a dark horse to reach the college football play? Maybe a team that's not favored or second choice in their conference that potentially could make a run.
Yeah, sure. I'll throw Ole Miss into this discussion, and this is a topic that they haven't really been a playoff contender the last 10 years, or really since the 60s for them. And last year they posted a banner year, 11 wins, got the New Year's Six bowl win over Penn State, and they're bringing a lot back. But the key is the transfer portal. And he calls himself the portal king, Lane Kiffin. He certainly backed it up with 3 straight top 2 transfer classes, number 2, number 1, number 1. So 17 4- and 5-star players are coming in the last 2 cycles, really supplementing this roster. And this is a program that, they might not recruit at the top 5 clip of a Georgia or a Bama. They're usually around 25th or 20th. But this narrowed the gap between the elites by bringing in all these transfers. So Jackson Dart back at quarterback. And it's not just backup players through the portal. These are all SEC, all-American guys. You have Jackson Dart back at quarterback, Juice Wells, an all-SEC receiver coming in, along with Trey Harris returning. And he uses his tight ends really well. It's a good offensive line. The defensive line was really supplemented through the portal, too, with 2 all-SEC guys. So I really like Ole Miss to surprise some folks. This is a team that, like I said, is not normally in that playoff discussion. They've been buried in that SEC West in the Saban era. But now the Portal King, I think he's going to strike. And as it projects right now, I have Oxford, Mississippi hosting a playoff game. How great would that tailgate be?
That would be a quite the scene. If you've not been to Oxford, Geoff, I suggest you get there for a game. It's quite a. Fortunately, I think I was there for the all-time day in college football in the Ole Miss recent history when they upset Alabama. And I guess it would have been 2015 maybe. That might have been the year when game day finally got down there, and right? Katy Perry was there. Bo Wallace, and it was an all-time scene. So, Geoff, I know I'm the Miami alum here.
Yes.
Okay. I want you to sell me on why you think my team can make the college football playoff, and then I will respond.
Well, Brett already has them in the playoff as ACC champion. I'm not sure I went that far, but look, number one is schedule, right? No Clemson, no NC State. And knowing this program and knowing Cristobal well, like the toughest game they're going to play will be at Cal, right, Bear? Like the game they're going to just kind of sleepwalk through will be that game, and they'll be up for Florida State, they'll be up for Louisville. But they're a talented football team. Like this is why, right? Cam Ward comes in from Washington State. He's a talented quarterback. Damian Martinez, a talented running back. Unlike some other teams that we think might be good, but they haven't addressed the offensive and defensive lines, Mario Cristobal has, right? He's done high school recruiting to address those positions, which you have to do. We saw we did at Oregon with that offensive line by 2019. Penei Sewell was there. Talk about JMA. They should have won the Joe Moore Award that year also, in my opinion. So Bear, they have those pieces in place. Now, the question is always, is there going to be a dumb loss that knocks him out of the race? As I mentioned, like at Cal, at Syracuse. Like I'm not worried about when they play Florida State and Louisville. I'm worried, Brett, about when they play the team that they should beat. I watched Stony Brook come to Autzen Stadium down 7 in the fourth quarter. I've seen those games before. So to me, Brett, I think Miami can be a playoff team. I'm not sure I have them winning the conference like you do, but why are you high on them as well?
Yeah, well, the ACC this year could be the most wide open conference along with the Big 12. I see three contenders. You have Miami, you have Florida State, the defending champs, and you have Clemson. But I found some more flaws with the other two. I think with Clemson, they used to be that dynasty that you'd pencil in at the top every year. I think they've receded from that peak with their lack of use of the transfer portal. Now, I'm a traditionalist as much as anybody. I love the old game, but there's some things you have to adapt to. And by ignoring the portal, they are leaving themselves thin in certain position groups that they could have supplemented. So I see them taking a slight step back again. Florida State, I love what Mike Norvell has done. They deserved to be in the playoff last year, but they sent so many guys to the pros. I think they're going through a recycle of their roster. So with Miami, they stood out as they were a top 25 team in my game grader formula last year. A team that looked better on paper statistically than they did in the win-loss record. That tends to correlate to some better record the next year. And yeah, you're right about some in-game stuff. Got to take a knee when you're in victory formation there. No, that's twice now. It was once at Miami, once at Oregon. You're just giving games away. So I think they learned their lesson there. Love the coordinators. Lance Guidry really built a machine at Marshall on defense. You see that happening here at Miami too. And Geoff hit on the transfer portal. They stacked another top 10 transfer haul in there. So I went position by position like I do for every team, and they're at the top of the ACC in almost every position. So I think it clicks. You had in 2022, it was Tennessee's big revival. In 23, it was Texas. I think this year it's Miami's turn to return to the national stage.
Well, I hope you two are right. As an alum and someone who wants to see his alma mater do well, I think that's all sounds great. And again, maybe it's the alumni pessimism, but I played under 9.5 wins. I did have to lay a little bit of a price there to get under 9.5 as opposed to under 9. If they win 10, that's great. I will be happy. I'll be happy to lose my bet. But again, they've won 10 games once in 20 years. That was a 2017 year that was kind of smoke and mirrors. We've heard before about the recruits coming in and the schedule. Like, this is still the same team that hasn't beaten North Carolina and God only knows how long. They've lost to Duke, they've lost to Georgia Tech, they've lost to Middle Tennessee. Like, the schedule's easy, but they've lost these games in the past. Now, they should be really good. Outside of Ohio State, no team out there has really spent as much in the portal as Miami has. You bring in Ward, you bring in Sam Brown, who we didn't mention, the wide receiver from Houston, Martinez, Simeon Brown from Michigan State, Tyler Brown from Tennessee. Like, there are no more excuses. Everything sounds great. Now there's a little problem. You just got to go to Gainesville week 1 and win against one of your in-state rivals, a team in Florida who has absolutely been shit on all off season about how bad they are, how their win total's 4.5, and they're going to be a bad year. That's a terrible spot for Miami, a team with so much hype and so many expectations going into the year, to now face a Florida team from the SEC on its home field, your favorite there. It's just a terrible, terrible, terrible way to open the year. And you were talking about other potential losable games or winnable games on the schedule, and you don't have to worry about playing Florida State or Louisville. You didn't even mention one of the games that I'm worried about, South Florida. South Florida nearly beat Alabama last year. Alex Golesh is super confident, great play caller. And Geoff, they're not even going to be, they're barely going to be not even a touchdown favorite in that game.
Right.
And that is a game that I would be concerned about if I were a Miami fan. Like, going to Louisville, playing Syracuse on the road, Florida State, Virginia Tech, the big games they'll get up. Could they win the ACC? Absolutely. Could they go 9-3 and win the ACC? Absolutely. Could they go 11-1? Absolutely. I think there is a wide range of outcomes here from Miami, but I kind of think 9-3 feels like the spot for the Canes.
Yeah, well, in this post-BCS era, this post-4-team era, those non-conference games, in a way, it doesn't really change their path to the ACC title game, which it sounds crazy to say out loud, but that's where we are. And, they will be slight favorites, I think, in the Swamp. It's going to be like a field goal game, Vegas-wise, either way. But yeah, even if they drop that game, as crazy as it sounds, they could still go win the conference and get that number 3 or number 4 seed in the overall bracket and a bye. So yeah, it's a 3-team race, but I couldn't find a better argument. Maybe Florida State, if they can reload quick enough, and if DJU can make enough improvements. He definitely grew at Oregon State, and we'll see if he can continue that trajectory. But I went Miami.
I by the way, I am off Florida State because of DJU. I watched him play a lot last year. Great family. Like, I like the kid, but you got to complete more than 60% of passes. I just don't see how that's going to be something that Florida State can rely on to win the conference when they have, as you mentioned, I think, one returning starter on defense, or one returning starter out of the entire 22 players that started last season for them. It's something outrageous like that. I know Bear wants to talk Penn State. I want to ask you one more question about the Big Ten. Is Iowa a sleeper playoff team? Schedule, no Michigan, no Oregon, no Penn State. If they can just have a tiny bit of offense. It's funny, at Big Ten Media Day, the talking point was Iowa's going to have motion and shifts in their offense this year. Like real big brain galaxy stuff. We're going to try to show our quarterback what the defense is going to do before the snap. How about that? Brett, if Iowa gets to 10-2, which is certainly doable, they're at Ohio State again. No Oregon, no Michigan, no Penn State. 10-2 in a tough Big Ten. No one wants to go play Iowa in the postseason.
Yeah, well, I got to tell you, my favorite bet of the whole season was the over total for their win. 7.5 was the open. I think that's, it has since gone up to 8.5. It's moved, but I really love that 7.5. Love their defense. This year around, they defended a lot of their talent from transferring or going pro with their Swarm NIL. So they brought almost everybody back. I know they lose Cooper DeJean off that defense, but 4 All-Americans for me on defense. And it's going to be veteran again. Phil Parker deserves all the accolades for what he does defensively. I love their formula. But he gets a lot of questions, Kirk Ferentz, about his offense, about the yards per game, the points per game. I love his response. He calls it wins per game, and he knows how to win games despite their unique formula there with it being defense and special teams. If they can get any improvement at all out of this offense from Tim Lester, he's landed a couple top 25 MAC offenses. I mean, he can scheme it up. If they can get any improvement at all, even a middle of the pack offense, this team could win 9-10 games. So now they have Power 5 quarterback play there after some injuries and a really rough room the last couple of years. So I think they're a top 20 team in the country, despite getting a lot of flack nationally. I love their formula, love their staff, and now they get an offense, a new boost on offense. So I think they're going to make a jump. They're my best bet of the year for wins, and 9 or 10 wins are in play.
There, I like hearing best bet for wins. That always piques my attention when I hear best bet. I like that. For those that don't know, you are a Pennsylvania native, so you're kind of dialed in there on the pulse of the Penn State fans. Like, where are we with Penn State? Like, so much has been made, at least that I've seen on social media, about like their lack of bringing in some of these top 10 recruits from the state of Pennsylvania who are going elsewhere. You've got a season win total now of 10. Drew Aller, another new offensive coordinator. Like where are you with Penn State? I think you can find them right some plus money potentially to make the playoff. I think they're probably number 3 in the Big Ten behind Ohio State and Oregon. I think they are ahead of Michigan. But do we think Aller is ultimately the guy who can lead them to maybe a bigger and better result than third?
Yeah, well, you're right about that. I'm based here in Unionville, Pennsylvania. There's really 2 storylines amongst the Penn Staters, one off the field, one on the field. Off the field, the recruiting angle that you touched on, it's a big point of pride for Penn State to retain the best talent in Pennsylvania. And after the 2021 class where they lost Marvin Harrison and Kyle McCord to Ohio State, they put the fence up around the border of the state. And the last 3 years, they've been done really well there, signing about half of the blue chippers within the state. That's good for Penn State. Now, the question is 2025. I know we're still at the verbal stage, but it is looking rough. And Ohio State is in there with 3 of the top 5 in the state. So that is where he's getting some heat off the field, is this 2025 class. On the field, the big issue is competing with the elites in the conference, Ohio State and Michigan. He couldn't get past that hurdle. But now, it sounds funny, but the playoff expanding from 4 to 12, Penn State's right in play. I mean, they're always top 12. They always have a strong defense, could be number 1 or top 5 again on defense. And the big question is, can they unlock that 5-star talent and quarterback that Drew Aller has? And I love their offensive coordinator. I had a chance to speak with him, Andy Kotelnicki. He worked wonders at Kansas with 2 stars and walk-ons. So I think that you're going to see Aller get a second-year bonus. I think the 5-star backs, Nick Singleton, a local guy, is an All-American caliber guy, along with Katron Allen. And they're my pick to go third and make the playoff this year.
Notre Dame. We'll be seeing them right off the bat, Brett and Geoff, as big doing kickoff will be in Morgantown for that Penn State West Virginia game week 1. So I'm looking forward to seeing Penn State. And it kind of feels like a now or never type year. You just the schedule, you get Ohio State at home, no Michigan, no Oregon, the road games. 2 of them are at Purdue and Minnesota. Those are 2 teams you aren't going to mind playing away from home. So it does feel like this is certainly a 10-2 type floor for Penn State. And if they can pull one of those upsets against Ohio State or win at Wisconsin, or they'll probably be favored at SC, like it does feel like 11-1 is certainly on the table.
Yeah, absolutely. They have a couple questions at receiver. They're very thin there, and that held them back last year at times. They did land Julian Fleming, who's coming home to Pennsylvania. He dominated in high school at Southern Columbia. That's a dynasty up there in the coal region. But he's back. He was, of course, the 3rd receiver at Ohio State last year. That's going to be the number 1 target now. And the other questions in the trenches, offensive line-wise, it's been a position group that has held them back all the way since the sanction years. They've been thin there and struggled until last year. They finally took a step forward. But now they're into reload status there. So can they reload after all those years of building? We'll see. But yeah, you're right. I love 10 wins at least for them, and it looks like a playoff spot.
How are we going to judge Notre Dame's season? They're most likely a playoff team, but their schedule is pretty.
Don't lose in Kyle Field week 1.
And I know you're going to pick them to lose that game.
Week 1.
You're much higher on Elko than I am in year 1 at A&M. I think there's a lot needs to be done there. Nonetheless, how are we going to view them after this season? I mean, they're going to be a playoff team, but are they a team that, even if a 5 seed, they could be 11-1 or 6 seed, are they going to win a playoff game? Are they as talented as their record's going to be after the season?
Yeah, well, a lot was made out of Notre Dame being excluded from the first round bye category because it went to the 4 automatic qualifying conference winners.
Yeah.
But the number 5 spot doesn't seem too bad if you're Notre Dame, because remember, they're not playing a conference title game. So they're missing out on the 13th game. Instead, they get to host the number 12 team in South Bend, who I think will most years be that non-AQ champion. So a Boise, an App State, a Memphis, or a Liberty, somebody like that. You figure Notre Dame will be favored by 7-10 points at least over a team like that. And then there they are in the Final Eight. So the question with Notre Dame this year is how many mulligans do they get in this new era, this new format? Back in the day in the 4-teamer, they pretty much had to go undefeated, maybe one loss. Now I think they definitely have the 1-game mulligan, maybe even 2-game mulligan. Could a 10-2 Notre Dame make the bracket? I still think so.
Yeah.
Manageable schedule. You talked about a rough opener at A&M. But from there, Florida State's tough. USC could be a ranked team, but looks very doable for them to get to 10 wins.
Yeah, pick them right now. I see for Notre Dame and A&M week 1. I just think, Geoff, I know you said you weren't necessarily high on Elko, but I think you're going to see just a complete culture change with that program at A&M. Finally, for the first time since you bring in Brett, you wrote this in your preview on A&M about how a lot of offensive minded head coaches, and now you bring in a defensive guy with Elko. You've got to replace your wide receivers. I think that's the biggest problem. Will Connor Wegman be healthy after the foot injury last year? Defensively, he's always going to field a good defense. Schedule-wise, it's probably about as good as you can get in terms of the SEC. There's no Bama, there's no Georgia, there's no Ole Miss, there's no Tennessee. It's a pretty good deal. So I think A&M, we were touching on maybe one of those surprise teams who ultimately can make the playoff. Maybe A&M is someone who you could take a little bit of a flyer on at a nice price to make the playoff.
Oh,
yeah. Go ahead, Geoff.
Buddy, they're not making the playoffs this year. Okay, if we assume Georgia's in, right? Mm-hmm. I think all three of us agree Ole Miss has a great chance to be in.
Yep, they have a chance.
Are we taking Bama? I'm taking Bama to make the playoffs. Are they 4? And are they finishing 4th?
Well, you haven't mentioned Texas either. They play Texas.
Texas, is Texas out? They're going to get 5 SEC teams in?
No, you're not going to get 5. I'm just saying, and I think Brett, I think you said something before about how this with the expanded schedule and like these massive mega conferences now, you may be in a situation where, because of the schedule, they're so unbalanced, maybe Team A won't be as good as Team B, but the schedule for Team A is going to allot them a better opportunity for a better record, which in the eyes of the committee might help them somewhat in the rankings. So, look, I'm not saying A&M is this world beater team at all, but I think after having so much hype in recent years, now Jimbo is gone and you bring in a new coach and a lot of the defensive parts are still there. If they can get it behind a physical running game mentality with that offensive line and get enough out of their wide receivers at 9-3, I think is certainly in play.
Yeah, you touched on it with the super conference era now, and not only the expanded conferences, but you take out divisions. So your normal pool of teams you're used to playing and crowning a division winner, that's all out the window. So the two things that stood out to me are going to be issues is the schedule imbalance. I had to make a huge grid on paper. I drew everybody out, who's playing who, to look for some angles there. A&M definitely has a boost there. They only face one of the 4 projected playoff teams, 3 of the top 8 in the SEC. So they get a schedule boost for sure. The other thing is the tiebreaker element, and with only 8 conference games in the SEC, but a 16-team league, you're going to have a lot of ties at the top or near the top. So tiebreakers are going to be coming in. So you got to look at this: who has a shot to get to 10-2? Because you're right about this with the committee. They do some loss counting. They just look at who has the least losses a lot of the time. And the SEC will get benefit of the doubt being the strongest league. So is there a path to 10-2? We're not calling for 12-0 these teams, but can they get to 10-2 or be in that mix? And they have as good a shot as anybody. Same as Ole Miss and maybe LSU and Tennessee are right in that mix too. It's a very top-heavy conference. And
it's so funny because you look at Georgia's schedule. There's a chance Georgia could go 10-2. I mean, Georgia's on paper the most talented team in the country, right there with Ohio State. But with that schedule, would you be shocked if Georgia lost 2 of those 3 road games? I certainly wouldn't be shocked. I would be surprised. But you could have a 10-2 Georgia wind up in the playoff. But we hit on earlier some of the surprise teams maybe to make it. And I think the surprise team, or the team that kind of nobody is thinking about making the playoff, is probably going to come from the Big 12. Geoff, I think you could talk about you can maybe name like 9 different teams from the
Right.
Big 12 that you said, oh, I think Arizona's going to win the Big 12. I think Kansas State's going to win the Big 12. I think Iowa State's going to win. I think Utah, Colorado. You could rip off Kansas, a number of different teams, and you would probably have a good case and a good argument as to why that might be. Where are you with the Big 12? I have I'll get into where I'm going with the Big 12 when you and Brett are done. But Geoff, what are your overall thoughts of the Big 12? Is there a win total there or something that you like?
I mean, look, I have a lot of respect for Kyle Whittingham and what he's done over the years at Utah. And you bring Cam Rising back for his, I don't know, 7th season. He actually has one more year of eligibility left, believe it or not. He could play his 8th year if he wanted to. Keithy comes back. And what's held Utah back over the years is a downfield passing game. Well, Dorian Singer transfers in. He should be able to really help with that defensively. They lose some guys up front, but they always reload defensively. And the hard part of their schedule is a little early in the season. So, even if they stumble early on, they should be able to sort of recover from that to get in a Big 12 championship game. Also, too, guys, they were so injured last season. We know that, right? Multiple quarterbacks, multiple running backs, multiple defensive players. Most often, you see the next year extreme health, right, to make up for that. Just sort of the way the football gods work. So if you have a healthy Utah team, Bear, that leads to me to believe even more that they have a chance to do this. I think their toughest game is they're at. Coming to the top of my head, they're at Oklahoma State early in the season. I think it's week 4. Yeah, it is week 4. Then Arizona, so sort of back-to-back tough games. Then they're off, and the back half of their schedule is not that difficult for the team they are. So if they can kind of get through that Oklahoma State, Arizona 1-1, Brett, it feels like Utah can certainly be at 10-2 or 11-2, win that conference.
Yeah, well, I agree with both of you. And first, in that it is the most wide open conference this year. I mean, you could argue 8, 9, 10 teams for this. It's a rare mix of a lot of above average teams. You don't have your elite top 5 team in the conference, but a lot of above average teams and a ton of returning production. They're very veteran teams. You look all across this league. You throw in the newcomer aspect with 4 teams coming in, new schedules. But then I'm going to go with Utah as well. I really like what Geoff was saying there. It's some of the key points. You get Rising back to stabilize the quarterback room. Brant Keithy, the do-it-all tight end, and Andy Ludwig does a nice job involving his tight ends. Very creative play caller and schemer. And then Morgan Scalley, an ace coordinator on defense, has a track record unlike most in the sport. So, and the one note there on injuries, I was covering them for KSL.com last year, doing some game recaps and previews. I'd never seen anything like the injuries. So I went back and charted it. 157 games lost to injury last year from their 2 deep. Just incredible. So you're going to see that boomerang effect in 2 ways. Like Geoff said, those guys are now back healthy. But then those young guys that were thrown into action early last year, you're going to see them years ahead of schedule. So I like the boomerang effect here. A lot of key All-American caliber, all Big 12 caliber players back on defense. Their track record is proven, manageable schedule. So in a really crowded pool, I think I trust Utah the most.
Yeah, I think Utah certainly is the most trustworthy because their secondary is always going to be good. And Geoff, you hit on it a little bit as well. Like, we're so used to Utah just being that physical running team, controlling the line of scrimmage up front with a really good stout defensive line to stop the run. Like, this Utah team has a chance to be a little bit different in terms of like how they're going to function offensively. And you certainly hit on that there, but I'm going to throw 2 more teams out as potential sleepers to win this league and make the playoff. And I think they're both right around 10-1 or so to win the league. The first is going to be UCF. I think KJ Jefferson and that offense with Gus is going to be a problem. And a problem in a good way for UCF and a problem in a bad way for a lot of those defenses in the Big 12. I think UCF could be a team moving into a power league now. You bring in Ted Roof and a bunch of transfers on defense. You get Arizona, Colorado, and Utah in Orlando with the bounce house. I think UCF is a team to watch out. And Iowa State, I think, is the other team to watch out for. John Hickok is going to always have a sound defense. They've got a bunch of starters and a bunch of production back. And you talked about Brett, about how Utah had all their injuries and they're going to be kind of ahead of schedule. Well, Iowa State kind of did that on offense last year. They took their medicine. They played the young kids, Beck at quarterback, Usama, and then the Higgins and Noel at wide receiver. And even despite all that last year, they beat Oklahoma State. They beat Kansas State. They were right in it with Texas. Like, this is the type of year, I think, when you want to be on Iowa State. I picked them to win, to potentially be a dark horse team to make the playoff in 2020, and they were 15 yards away from winning the Big 12 and being there. And then the last couple of years, people have kind of been on them and they've disappointed. Like, I think that the fact that the bandwagon is a little light and people aren't necessarily on Iowa State this year, this is, I think, the year that you want to back Matt Campbell and the Clones. So I think Iowa State and UCF are two teams. If you're looking for someone outside of Utah and Kansas State to represent the Big 12 in the playoff, I think those two teams have as good of a chance as any.
Yeah, I mean, I'll throw Oklahoma State into the mix too. If you like the returning production stat, the returning starters stat, Oklahoma State might be your team. They have 20 starters back off a team that was a runner-up last year in Dallas. So kind of a proven commodity under Mike Gundy, All-America caliber running back, Heisman, maybe front runner with Ollie Gordon. Could go for 2,000 yards this year. And but yeah, I'm not going to go Oklahoma State. I love that you threw UCF into the mix. I think this is a team that's being slept on nationally. I think I'm the only magazine out there to have them in my top 25 preseason, and they certainly deserve it. They're a team that they took some lumps in their transition year. Everybody tends to, but a lot of close losses, a lot of one-score losses, and I think I attribute that to a really talented starting 22, but not as much depth as these other legacy Power 5 teams. But they really supplemented their depth this time around through the transfer portal. 3 all-conference caliber linebackers coming in to stack that linebacker room. The D-line is veteran. And you mentioned KJ Jefferson coming in. Look, we're going to hear this comparison 100 times in the season, but Gus Malzahn, 6'6", 250 quarterback, it sounds a lot like the Cam Newton offense at Auburn. So, not to oversimplify it, but I know that he likes that style of play. And I like UCF to definitely get that 7.5 wins and a dark horse for the conference.
Yeah, there was actually a head-to-head season wins bet at DraftKings where SMU and UCF were pitted against each other, and SMU was a significant favorite in that. So I kind of like the other side. So I always like seeing the plus money with the side that I really like a lot more. So I did play that UCF more wins than SMU with the newcomer to the ACC as well. Brett, can't thank you enough.
Yes, thank you so much.
Appreciate all your insight. It was an awesome conversation. Hopefully we will talk again throughout the year. Best of luck with your picks. Best of luck with everything you do during the season. And everybody out there, again, Pick Six previews. Make sure you check out Brett on Twitter. And if you haven't purchased his preview, I suggest you do it. You will make yourself nothing but much smarter as the season approaches.
Oh, thanks, Chris. Thanks, Geoff. Yeah, really appreciate you having me on. It's an honor. And thanks for the praise for the book. And yeah, best of luck in 2024. Hope to talk again soon.
Thank you to Brett for joining us. Pick Six previews. I think Bear and I are in full agreement here. Bear, it's the best preview magazine. I love it. We both love it. We use it often, and you guys should as well. Good to have Brett on the show with us. Time for our first best bet of the 2024 football season. It goes to you, Bear. What is your team total best bet?
Well, I think we're looking to extend our college football run to straight to 2 in a row, right? I think we both hit our best bets in the national championship game last year. So we're looking to stay hot. Joking around, but I hate laying 140 on something I'm going to deem my best bet, and I know Geoff is going to hate this because of something he said earlier in the show. But I think Arizona under 8 is my best bet. Like, if they have to do 9-3 to beat me, fine. You've got a new league, you've got a new staff. Fafita and T-Mac are back, but what happens if something happens to T-Mac? Like, if he goes down, like, do they have anybody else at wide receiver that can really step up and fill that void? I think they were so deep up front last year on the defensive line. That entire rotation is gone. Like, I worry about these teams that were breakthrough teams. Like last year, surprised everybody, won 10 games, and now this year, super hyped. Like, I worry like be a little too much pub around this team, a little too much hype. Like remember, not too long ago, like this is a team that was on a 20-game losing streak. So while Jed Fish did a great job in rebuilding this team, parts of that team are now gone other places with him at Washington and whatever else. Like the road schedule is about as tough as you could get in this league. You get the two favorites, Utah and Kansas State, on the road, and Utah certainly be out for payback after getting beat up when they were beat up with injuries last year. UCF and TCU on the road. Who knows what Colorado and West Virginia and Texas Tech will be like? Just doesn't feel like there are any layups in this league. While Arizona certainly could win the league, they're one of the group of teams that we were talking about earlier. Like you could say like 8 or 9 different teams to win the league, and certainly if they did win the league, it wouldn't surprise me. But I'm on the fade train for Arizona this year in terms of season wins. I'm betting under 8, and I expect to push it worst.
I think all the points you make are very accurate with sort of the roster and the depth they have. Brett Brennan
you're wrong.
comes in.
Here comes the butt. Here it comes.
I was just saying. I said Brett Brennan. I didn't even say butt yet. I said Brett Brennan, new coach there. High hopes for him. But no, look, you're right in the premise of fading a team that was good last season, not out of nowhere, but relatively out of nowhere, with a new coach. Who didn't recruit these players. Now, they're good players, but that does matter, right? A lot of times you want your own players in there. He convinced a couple to stay. They move on from their left tackle, went to the NFL, their defensive line, and the defensive improvement we saw last year. That coach now is at Texas, right? So they lose those coaches as well. And no, I think you're honestly with Arizona. I don't know. Maybe my West Coast bias shows a little bit here. I don't think they're going to be 7-5, but you get a push at 8 though, right? So you'll take that. My best bet, Bear, is the State College of New Jersey.
State University of New Jersey.
State College.
SUNJ.
State University of New Jersey. The Rutgers Scarlet Knights over.
Now, if I were a good host,
6 wins.
If I were prepared, I would run to my bookshelf right now and get the Rutgers helmet and throw it on my head and on.
You have time while I talk to go make that happen.
I do?
Okay. Yes, you do. Rutgers, guys, over 6 wins. I even took it over 6.5 at like plus 105. When we talk about win totals, the first thing that you hear Bear and I talk about is schedule. Schedule matters, right? The top 5 projected teams.
Old school Rutgers right here, baby.
Look at that.
There's no way I'm getting this on my head. This is like a 7 and an 8, Geoff. I got no shot at this.
Look at that logo. They need to bring that back. This is the
old school Rutgers logo for those of you watching on the and like Scarlet Knights on the. This is just a beautiful right here.
A beautiful helmet. The top 5 teams.
Hold it while you talk about them
in the Big Ten: Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan, Iowa, Penn State, in whatever order you want. Rutgers plays none of them, Bear. Nope. They play none of those teams this season. None. 0. 3 of those 5 teams were 3 of the 6 losses last season. So 6-3 playing everyone else. Here's why, too. They had a bunch of NFL caliber defensive players return for one more season. Their running back, first 1,000-yard running back since 2012 there. Monungai comes back.
Stink. That's the only problem.
They're what?
Quarterback might stink. That's the only problem.
It can't be worse than last season. So if they're a little bit better than last season, and again, they missed the top 5 teams in the conference. So I need 7 wins, 7-5 Rutgers. I think you can totally happen. They beat your alma mater in the bowl game. That doesn't matter, obviously, to a win-loss record, but nonetheless,
terrible game. By the way,
end on a good note. Yeah, the Pinstripe Bowl end on a good note, and I think Rutgers with the schedule they have and sort of the returning players they have on the offensive line, the running back, the defense, the quarterback, to your point. It's the transfer from Minnesota, I believe. Wasn't great in Minnesota last season. But look, man, I mean, it's Howard, Akron, bye week, at Virginia Tech, Washington. So 3-1 at Nebraska, tough game. Wisconsin at home. Who knows what the Badgers are? Quarterback play, question mark. UCLA, USC, Minnesota, Maryland, Illinois, Michigan State. 7 wins are happening at that schedule. So Rutgers over.
Chiano, chopping the wood.
Let's do it.
Hey, I know a couple people else are Kai on high on Sunge as well. But it would be good. I'm a Greg Schiano fan. What he did the first time around at Rutgers was amazing, and I certainly think that they have an hour. And again, we hit on it earlier with Brett, like these conference schedules. You're going to get some kind of fluky one-loss records from teams that just avoid the good teams in the league. But I think 7 wins for Rutgers is certainly something that we can we're in the mix for. So we got an over and we got an under. But yeah, so that's the first one in the books. Hope we'll have some more coming up over the next few weeks. Kick around some more win totals, some awards, some conferences, but plenty of good things. And I'm sure we'll be adding to our over/under bets as the weeks progress here and the season gets closer. So again, appreciate Brett for joining us. Geoff, football season's here, and we are both excited. Appreciate everybody out there for watching. Remember to rate, review, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. College football preview, win total preview number 1 in the books. Remember, the less you bet, the more you lose when you win.